just want to give you a quick preface going into this episode of Through the Trauma podcast. I will say that this is probably one of the most vulnerable episodes that I have done because I am sharing some things about my past that if you have seen my story video, you may understand. If not, it may come a little bit as a surprise. But I wanted to also warn you that we are going to tackle some really hard topics and some things that a lot of times people don't want to discuss. I wanted to let you know that this episode may not be suitable for children. And if you have a child listening, you may want to reconsider and listen at another time. I also wanted to warn you that some of the topics here, though they're very near and dear to my heart, that they are a little bit more difficult to talk about. I do hope that you will proceed and listen to the episode because I feel like there is such valuable context and information in it. And I truly hope that you are inspired and touched and you will pass the episode along to whoever you think would benefit from hearing the things that we discuss. Welcome to Through the Trauma Podcast. My name is Amber Larkins, published photographer, storytelling expert, visual artist, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach. This podcast was born from one question: how do I get inspiring stories of triumph out to the people who need to hear them the most? Come with me, enter my world, where lives are getting changed, heroes are getting developed, and greatness is being achieved. Hello, and welcome to Through the Trauma Podcast. I am Amber Larkins, your host, and today I have a very special guest with me, Mr. J.K Emezi. He is a porn recovery coach, and I'm so excited to get to talk to him and hear all of his input. This is going to be a very powerful conversation. So, JK, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Amber. I appreciate it. I'm excited to get into this.
Yes, me too. Well, why don't you give a small introduction of kind of who you are and what you do, and just let the viewers know.
Well, my name is J.K. Emezi. I'm the founder of Elevated Recovery. I'm also the head recovery coach at the Porn Reboot coaching system, and we help men who are struggling with sexually compulsive behaviors overcome their behavior. I've been doing this for 11 years now, and it all began with me actually being an addict and having a compulsive problem with high-speed internet pornography. Well, back then, let's be honest, the internet wasn't so high speed, but I still had a problem with it. And Amber was kind enough to connect with me, and we're doing things that are parallel. I think the heart of what we do is aligned, and it's always exciting to share one story of transformation. And hopefully for the listeners, there'll be something that I share that you can connect with and might bring you some hope.
You know, this is a topic that I feel like is just, it's not talked about enough. And I feel like we live in a culture and in a society where this needs to be brought to the forefront more, because this is not, it's not a form of innocent entertainment. It is destroying lives, and it destroys lives on both ends, not just on the end of the porn viewer, but also on the end of the entertainer. So I love what you're doing. And I love that you're bringing an awareness to this topic.
Oh, thank you so much. I think it's one of the reasons that I was excited to speak to you was because we would have the opportunity to talk more about what's happening on the other side. And it's so important for me when working with our clients for them to develop the ability to be intimate. One of the things that pornography does, and any sort of compulsive behavior, is that it takes away your ability to be intimate. One of our big goals is to bring them back to intimacy. And we do that because the opposite of an addictive behavior is not sobriety. It is always connection. And when it comes to sexual behavior, a lot of them have spent so much time being spectators that when they try to be intimate, they end up being very performative. So they're really just trying to recreate what they've seen. But it's also very helpful for them to understand that we're human beings and those people that they're seeing on the other side are not just objects. It's so easy to literally objectify women and men on the other side of a screen, or when you're sitting down and they're entertaining you in one way or the other. And so when you start hearing their stories and hearing that and being curious as a human being, that's a big part of being human, curious as to how did this person end up here? What are they thinking and what are they feeling? Like behind this facade, behind the face, behind the makeup, behind the everything that they're doing to portray and create this fantasy for you, what is it like for this human being? And when you start understanding that, then you stop being so selfish and you start realizing that, hey, is it right for me to be so addicted and so compulsive about this thing when there might be somebody on the other side paying a price? And that was one of the reasons that I was excited to get on the podcast with you, Amber.
I have not shared a lot of my story. Like recently, God has really placed on my heart to speak out more on these things and to share more of my story. But I will tell you that the amount of shame that I felt coming out of that industry, I was never in porn. I never did any porn or anything like that. But I worked in a strip club for 5 years. And
Mm,
having worked in that industry, for by God's grace, somehow I did not get involved in the drugs and into the prostitution part of it. But after working there for 5 years, I saw this and I saw how it takes women down this bad path. And I still keep in touch with some of the girls that I worked with, and some of them have went on to have thriving lives, and then other ones of them have it has literally destroyed their lives.
mm,
And I can look back in my own trauma and I can see the areas of my life where it has impacted me for the worst. And this is one of the things that I entered that arena by choice. I was young. I was 19 years old. I said, it sounds like fun to me. It sounds like something that we get to hang out with my friends all night. And, so what if we take off our clothes? No big deal. But it turns very quickly from that to this. Let me say this. There's a couple things. One, you get addicted to the money. So you get caught up and you get stuck in this place that you start to not like yourself. You start to realize that the self-worth, like, I'm selling myself for money that's just running through my fingers. I'm not keeping any of this. I'm not benefiting from it. But you also, like, you don't know what else to do with your life. Like, I forsook a career. I had a college degree.
yeah.
I decided to do this, for fun, and I got stuck in it for 5 years. And it wasn't until I was on the verge of suicide that I come out of it. And that's when I got saved. And that's when it's a funny thing, because I felt when I come out and I got saved, I felt like God was saying, one day I'll speak on this and I'll bring awareness to this. And I really felt like he was saying, one day you'll be back in that club, but this time on the other side. And that's why I really love what you're doing, because I feel like you and I were so aligned, but yet we're on different sides. Like, we're
Mm.
seeing different sides of it. And I feel like we truly have the potential to bring awareness to a really dark thing that people don't want to talk about. Or if they do want to talk about it, they want to make it normal, like it's okay to do, like it's just a form of entertainment. But how can it be if it's destroying lives on both sides?
Absolutely. I was on I think it was like 3 years ago. I was on a big, it wasn't a TV show, it was like a YouTube show where they had us, it was called Should You Watch Pornography? And they had myself, an anti porn activist, and a young Christian lady against a woman who watched a lot of pornography, and a transgender porn producer, and a porn star. And we were having a debate about this. And I remember the porn producer mentioning that Pornography should not be stigmatized, right? It should not be stigmatized because there's so many stories of empowerment. And likely with you too, there's stories of people who have made a good income and being a sex worker or in that industry led them to financial freedom, helped them to take care of their babies. And of course, there are a lot of stories you don't hear about. There are a lot of people who did these things, they moved on, they got married, they had kids, and they will never talk about it, but the kids will never know the sacrifice that mom or dad made for them to be there. And my argument to him was that there are some things that should be stigmatized, not because of the good stories, but because of the horrible stories that come by later. In its early stages, certain things can seem nice and good, but eventually it goes out of control. It's the same for anything. It's the same even for religions. A religion can start out as a conduit to the spiritual, helping people to connect with something that's deeper. But at the same time, it can extend to burning buildings, putting people up on crosses, persecuting people. Everything does have to have that box. And I love what you said about um, early on, it seems like fun, it's empowering. Sometimes it even seems safe, but then as you go deeper into it, you question the cost. Like, what
Mhm.
is the price I am paying for this behavior? And I think, Amber, when we look at today's world, where during the pandemic, sites like Pornhub, really the parent company, MindGeek, started empowering, so to speak, people to become creators. And now we live in this whole creator economy where you go on, you put your body out there, you get paid for it. It's a very intoxicating drug
Mhm.
because you actually think that you have a skill set. You don't have a skill set. You are actually just a human being using using your body as currency. But so many people are getting caught up in this. And I meet a lot of young people now. I remember speaking to somebody who said that she was making $15 to $25,000 a month on OnlyFans. Um, that's a lot of money because I remember being at a conference where I was a facilitator, and I remember being in a cab. This was in Vegas. And the cab driver said, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, I help men end their behavior with pornography." And he was like, "Why are you coming out of Sapphires?" And Sapphires is the biggest strip club there. The interesting thing was we had rented out the VIP room there before the ladies started dancing to actually host this event, because we wanted to show the guys that when you walk in, the women are all sitting there, hunched over with belly rolls, like on everyone's on their phone. And I'm like, this is what it actually looks like. This is what they are like before the lights go on. But long story short, this individual, this man he was an accountant, retired accountant driving an Uber. And he said his job was he helped a lot of sex workers, especially strippers, manage their money. And he was telling me how much they were making. And I'm only telling this story because he was saying there were girls who were making, $1,500 a night, $2,500 a night. You probably know better than I do. But we have girls now who are doing nothing. They're not meeting men in person. They're just sitting there with their phone, and they're making 25K. Some of them $70,000 a month. And then we think of what's going to happen to this girl who's 19 years old, 20 years old now, when she's 25, when she's 27, when she's 30. And I think we should be having more of that conversation, because some people might hear only the money. But I'm also curious to hear from you on your side, because I know some of my listeners are also going to listen to your podcast, as to what the mental impact is on a person.
Yeah, I mean the mental impact is huge. This is the thing that I don't think people realize. And this is one of the things that really bothered me coming out of the industry was I felt like a really horrible person. Like I felt like I had, regardless of what it had done to me emotionally and to my own mindset,
Mm,
I felt like I had destroyed marriages and homes. You know, I would dance for men that had, you know, money. They were taking money from their kids, from their wives, and coming and dancing and coming and buying strippers. And
mm,
I struggled with that for a really long time. I felt the weight of that shame, like, because right after I come out of it, I got saved. And when I give my heart to God, it was like, I'm this horrible person. And honestly, it was my relationship with God, the only thing that really got me through that. Because I am an empath and I do feel things, and I would have, it would have probably destroyed me, that feeling. But that
mm.
doesn't happen to everybody. There is
True.
a there You have to think this, like what you were talking about going into the strip club and seeing this. And I think it's a good thing, because people need to see the other side. Entertainment is entertainment. How do I want to say this? Like, that's not entertainment when it's destroying things at every angle. It's destroying the lives of the people who's doing it, the mental impact. Now they're not building skills anymore. They're taking this break in their life. They're doing this thing that is promoting money in the short term. But anytime money comes easy to us, we usually don't, not saving that. We're not investing it. Usually it's just going through our fingers. We're living the high life, you know, the fun, the excitement. So it's impacting that area. It's impacting the people who come and step into this, because let's face it, even if they are just watching, you know, OnlyFans, or watching women in their bikinis or whatever, you know, it's like everything. Our human nature says that we have to go down. It's like, at what point do we stop? Like, there's a boundary, and then we push that boundary, and then we go a little further. There's another boundary, and then we push that boundary. So it's like, if I'm engaging in one form of like mild pornography, what happens when that's not enough? Now I'm having to engage in something a little bit more to get that same kind of dopamine hit. And so I feel like we have that from the angle of the people who are coming in and viewing these things. But then you have the impact of the family, you know,
Mm,
like what happens when, on both sides, you have both families. You have the dancers, or the pornography entertainers, or, you know, sex industry workers. And then you have the other side, which is the people who are viewing this,
mm.
and you have their kids and their spouses. And what is that doing? It's a very disruptive thing. And I know people think they can embark on these things very innocently, but it's not, because it's not only affecting you. You think it's only affecting you, but it's not. I want to say it's like any other toxic behavior, but it's really not, because I read somewhere that, like, the dopamine hit from relationships and from sexual connection is one of the strongest emotions that we can feel. If we're engaging in this, it's really not like any other toxic behavior.
Absolutely not. I had a client ask me the other day, Amber. He asked, JK, is there anything else that I can look forward to that's going to feel as good as the feeling of orgasm? And often when a client asks this, it means they are struggling. It means they're trying to justify, why am I ending this behavior? Usually they've had a slip or a relapse. I don't know the answer they expect from me. I suspect they expect me to say that there's something better than that. The truth is, orgasm is an amazing thing. It's short-lived. Probably the only thing that could compare to it, and I haven't had this experience, would be having a hit of heroin. But just because something is a very powerful experience in terms of the sheer amount of dopamine that's released, does not mean that there are other experiences of a different quality. The problem is we are not giving those other experiences enough of an opportunity. The example I use is I used to feel that orgasm was the best thing ever. But at the same time, there were more subtle feelings, such as feelings of being connected to someone. Like when you deeply love someone and you just feel it right here, like you just feel that squeeze of, God, I love this person like so much. I care for them. And I say, but have you taken the time to build on that? Have you taken the time to take this feeling from here that you love someone so much and have it just embody your whole being? Have you had that spread out to other people? People hear that and they're like, well, I don't know. That sounds kind of woo-woo. I'm like, no, it isn't. It's you took orgasm and you expanded it. It went from masturbation to watching pornography to someone on OnlyFans because they're a little bit real. And now you're stepping out of your marriage. Now you have multiple mistresses. Now you got 5 sugar babies that you're maintaining. Now you're engaging in all types of other pornography that is not in tune with your sexual behavior. Now you're taking your fetishes that were just fantasies and you're now paying money, taking money from others in your life in order to live them out. I was like, you can do the very same thing with love and kindness and compassion and joy. And here's the thing, everything has a compounding effect. The compounding effect of dopamine is destructive because you need more and more stimuli. You need more and more societally unacceptable behavior. You need to suppress your guilt and your shame more and more in order to get the dopamine hit. But to get everything else, you need more and more connection. You need to be more and more honest. You need to be more and more spiritual. You need to be more and more connected with other people to get those subtle hits. The only issue is right now, we live in a society where those things are not encouraged. We live in a society where pornography, sexuality, being empowered by it are the things that are praised. And a lot more disturbing things in society that are being like absolutely normalized. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I just want to say that I absolutely agree with you on how far people will go to satisfy this. And the truth is, there is no end. There is no end. Your brain can only take so much. I tell my average client that, you know, a man today, Amber, who views pornography in this generation is the only generation where men have viewed more people having sex and seen more naked bodies than every single one of their ancestors from the beginning of time. This is the
Mm.
only time in history with high-speed internet. Think about it. Isn't that crazy? You've seen more sex than every one of your ancestors combined before you're even the age of 40 years old, if you're growing up today. And that's if you're a casual porn viewer, not even if you're addicted. And the question I ask is, brother, do you think that your brain was designed for that? No, you don't. It's not normal. So you're not living a normal life. There's nothing
Mhm.
normal or happy or joyful or intimate about any of that.
Mhm. No, I agree. And I truly believe that what is better than orgasm is experiencing that, like you said it, experiencing that with someone that you love, that you care about, that you are truly connected with. I've seen it on the other side of being in the club. I've went
Mm,
back and I've thought about this. I've had 20 years since I've stepped out of those doors to really
mm,
look back and think on these things. And I think a lot of the people that are in there, that the women, I'm talking about the women and maybe the men too, but you could probably speak on this more than me. But the women are there because they lack connection. The video that I sent you of my story, when I went back and I tried to really analyze what it was that put me there, because I actually had a very healthy home upbringing. I had a very good relationship with my father. I had we still have a really great relationship. And maybe that's why I didn't get so deep into it like some women do. But um, I've gone back and I've wondered, like, what pushed me into
mm.
that form of work, And it
Yep.
was because I did, I did feel empowered when I first started. I felt really empowered. I had long-term boyfriends all my life. And these long-term boyfriends, every one of them had cheated. I actually I was married, for 13 years. And again, it's like every relationship I've had that has ended has been because of cheating. And there's something empowering about being able to say, now I can, now I get to make the rules.
Mm,
And I don't know if that's where that came from in myself. I don't know. I've gone back and I've tried to analyze, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of
yeah.
because I don't want to take this in a different direction. But I truly believe that going back to being able to feel connection, I think that it's something that people lack, and that's why we're deceived by these sexual desires, is because we're really craving that connection, but we don't know how to get it, and we lack the healthy guidance, which is amazing what you're doing, because you're giving people healthy guidance to get capture that connection so they don't need this anymore.
Absolutely. I will say, I will comment on something. You had mentioned about men being in long-term relationships, having men cheat on you, and feeling empowered. I think, again, this is just my suspicion from, I think some women um, do live in society and are put in a box. And even though they have healthy relationships with men in their lives, all these statistics thrown out there. So it's because there was no father in the home. That's why she went out and acted that way. But there are a lot of women, like you said, that had healthy relationships. They're like, there's nothing crazy happening in my family. But that doesn't change the fact that um even in a healthy family, somebody can feel like they're boxed in and they feel they don't have certain opportunities. I don't think any of us is immune from hurt or trauma. I think all of us go through it to some extent. So I'm actually very glad that you brought that up. It's actually good to hear and breaks the myth that you have to come from some really abusive past to feel that way. And when it comes to the reason why men engage in this behavior, there are many men who they simply use it as it's an outlet for dealing with stress, strong emotions. Today we're talking mostly about the unresolved issues that a lot of people are dealing with. And when it comes to the trauma of this, um, they are a good portion of men who have been traumatized. And I tell my clients that a lot of them experienced something traumatic at some point in their life. They created a memory of it. And it's almost as if you create the memory of it, and that part of you, when you experienced it, that created the memory, went to sleep. You grow up into an adult, you become sexually active, and that part of you is still there. It's kind of sleepwalking, but it is reacting the way it reacts to that memory because it didn't have the coping strategies to deal with whatever happened. The way it acts anytime that comes up is to act out sexually. It's to experience some sort of pleasure, usually which comes from dopamine, in order to feel good about the memory of the traumatic events that happened. And I was telling my clients this just in our Wednesday session. What's today? Friday. On Wednesday, that it's not the trauma itself that is the hard thing for a lot of people. It is the belief that the trauma shouldn't have happened that keeps people stuck in the trauma itself. Again, it's not
Mm,
the trauma itself, it is that belief that this shouldn't have happened to me in the first
mm,
place. That's actually what keeps people stuck in it. So they're so focused on, why did this thing happen to me? Like, I need to figure out the why, but they're not talking about I'll typically ask a man, well, do you feel this should have happened to you? And he's like, what sort of question is that? Of course not. I was like, well, what if you were to look at it and say it happened anyway? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, you want to know about the trauma, how, and all these things, and the why it happened to me. Like, why did I become this way? Have you ever thought about it happened and I didn't have the coping strategies for it? I was innocent. I didn't do anything wrong. It just happened. And something within me came up to protect me. Today, it's still protecting me. I still go out to the strip club. I still watch pornography. It's like, oh, bad feeling came up. Like I can't connect. So I'm gonna go feel better about it. I'm gonna go distract myself. Have you ever asked yourself, like, what if it's just okay that it happened? And suddenly they're like discombobulated because there is the insistence that it shouldn't have happened to me. I'm not ready to let that go. But the moment anybody starts focusing on the reality and going, and that must, in rational emotive behavioral therapy, Dr. Albert Ellis calls it masturbatory thoughts. You're masturbating on this must not have happened to me. This person must not be this way. And because of that, we end up we're suffering, but then we become addicted to suffering about our suffering. And that's the thing. It's
Mm.
not the suffering. It's just like we just keep replaying this, and it's just going down one layer more that really helps people disconnect, especially from something as powerful as a compulsion to anything sexual.
Mhm. Wow, yeah, you just dropped fire.
I don't know
Just
where that came from. I went off a little bit. I forgot what you
no,
mentioned, but
that was amazing because that since I've done this podcast and I've talked to different people, that really is descriptive of all types of trauma. And I talked to a therapist I don't know, maybe 2, 3 months ago, and
mm,
she was sharing with me that in children, she works with children, and she
mhm,
said that in children, we see that trauma usually will manifest in either violence towards themselves or like an overbearing promiscuity, like
mm,
where they act out in one of those two ways. And it stuck with me because I'm like, wow, that's very interesting. Like you're either seeing, trying to hurt themselves, trying to hurt themselves. And we think of this like in adults, we don't, it's subconscious. Sometimes we don't know we're hurting ourselves or we know it's not good for us. Like people that lean on alcohol or people that lean on drugs or people that lean on highly, active promiscuity or whatever. And it's like it usually falls back on something that is unresolved inside of us that we're not willing to dig up and face. And it's man, I just feel like if people, I guess you have to be on a path of self growth. Like you have to determine in your mind, I want to be the best person I can be, and I'm not going to let these things stop me. And that's when you can really get on that trajectory of growth and like digging these things out and healing from them. And I'm not saying by any means like that's easy. I don't think that's an easy thing to
mhm.
do. It takes a lifetime sometimes, but the journey of healing is so much more powerful than the journey of self destruction.
Absolutely. I think even the word powerful, some people who may be listening that are not yet on that journey might miss the powerful part of it. I think some people think of it as in a more egotistic way, as this makes me a more powerful, stronger person. That's usually coming from that part of you that's traumatized. When you hear empowered, you hear, oh, this is something that's going to protect that part of me. But the truth is, powerful simply means kind of dropping a lot of the things you were using, the armor that you were using to protect yourself and project yourself into the world. The power is being vulnerable and realizing that by dropping certain coping mechanisms, I connect more. And the authentic me, the part that I used to think was raw, like, oh, you're going to pull it off and I'm going to be raw and I'm going to be hurt, you realize that person isn't hurt, that person has a power in the ability to connect, that person's presence when they show up in a vulnerable way, you actually cannot be hurt, because by showing up open and raw and vulnerable, people see that and it reflects, because immediately they see that, oh my god, I have this armor, this person is so open, in their presence, I realize I am weak. And you begin to realize too that when people come at you because of your vulnerability, it's simply because they are seeing that. They are seeing your true strength. You came at them like in a battle, in a duel. And they're just like, yeah, I got on my armor. And it's like, you just took your armor off. And you're like, let's go. And they're like, it doesn't matter whether I win or not. Everybody watching is going to know that I was wearing armor and this person wasn't. You win by default because, like, of your courage. And that part of us, you were saying, Amber, that inner part, whatever you call it, doesn't matter what modality you're using. Some people call it subpersonality, some people call it your shadow self, some people call it your inner child. Whatever you call it, I think it's important for the listeners to know that it is all the same thing. It is an identity that you had that was hurt by something. It's
Mhm.
just that identity. You may use alcohol to make it feel better. When a child is younger, they may not know how to deal with that identity, but they might be, as children, often they are more aware of it than we are as adults because we have so many coping strategies. So they may try to hurt that part of them because they don't want it to be there. They feel it in a more visceral way. Sometimes we have multiple of these identities. We have the identity that is addicted to food, and that's how it feels better. And then you're like, oh, I thought I was done with the food thing. And then it's taken over by the identity that is wants to look good and beautiful. Then you overdo it in the gym and you look at, then it's just like too much in that section. And then it's taken over. There might be something with your sexual behavior. There might be something that is codependent on other people. And you're right, Amber. Sometimes it is a lifelong process. While I'm in control of my sexual behavior, for a couple of years I was feeling good about myself. I was like, yeah, this is the healing journey. This is under control. And then I realized I wasn't done. There was still aspects of my personality. There was still parts of me that were shameful till today, right now, even as we are on this podcast. There are parts of me that are shameful. There are parts of me that are egotistical. There are parts of me that are greedy. And they are damaging parts if they are not controlled. So not only do they have to be controlled, but they also have to be brought into the light. The shame attached to them, the strong emotions have to be exposed and they have to be healed too, like everything else.
Mhm. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I can relate 100% because, same, I still to this day wrestle with this thing of like, what do you say? What do you not say? Like, am I saying too much? Do I share this? There's still a lot of things. And I'm curious to what you think about this, but I've done a lot of meditation on this, like triggers, and I believe that sometimes we can feel like we're on the other end of it, like you said about whatever your crux is, we feel like
Mm.
we're on the other end of it, but then something happens and we're triggered by it, and all of a sudden we catch ourselves acting out of control, and then we're like, whoa, where did that come from? And I always, my first resort is I ask myself, was I triggered? What was I triggered by? Like, what is causing me to react? But I'm curious what you think of that. What are your thoughts on triggers?
Well, triggers happen to anybody who's if you're talking about trauma or compulsive behaviors, triggers could be emotional, they could be mental, they could be brought up by other people who come into their lives. The illustration I'd like to use is for the brothers that we work with who are in what we call the maintenance stage. The maintenance stage is when they're in control of their behavior. So they could see a naked woman on the street and they wouldn't react. It's not a big deal. However, they could they could hear from an ex. They could get a text from an ex. They could see that an ex got married. They could anything, something from their past could come up and it causes them to completely fall apart. They could go to certain places and certain smells, certain feelings, certain any sort of sense uh, 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 could be triggered, and that they end up slipping and relapsing. And this is why I tell clients that your slips and your relapses are data. They are never something to get emotional about, right? When you get triggered and you end up engaging in that behavior and you go deep into the emotion of, I did it again. I thought I was over this. I have this image. People think I'm this responsible person. I can't believe that after all these years or months. And sometimes people don't even know. Sometimes it's a very private thing. You're just like, wow, I went on a trip and I did that. Like, I can't believe I would do that. The key there is to remember, again, I'm going to bring up another Albert Ellis quote, that anybody can recover from an addictive behavior, but nobody can recover from being human. And when it comes to triggers, it's important to realize that there's nothing like perfection. We don't use a 12-step methodology simply because I don't believe in perfection. I don't also believe in, if you slip and relapse after 3 years, you have to start from the beginning. You grew over those 3 years. You don't start again. You find out what the data is. What was the trigger? Was it something new in my life? And also realize that triggers don't have to be bad. Sometimes you get triggered because you are stepping into a new level of your life. And you don't have, every time you step into a new level, you need courage first. The courage gives you the capacity, because now you step into it with courage and you're like, okay, I didn't die. It's really scary. But then once you get through that, your capacity for doing something increases. Now you stay at that level. But between courage and that capacity to do more, it's very uncomfortable. There are new emotions, there are new feelings, and some of these things are going to be naturally triggering to you. And it's okay. What people get caught, they get caught up on, like I said again, is the masturbatory thoughts.
Mhm.
I must not slip or relapse because of who I am. I must not have thoughts because it was 20 years ago. I must not want something like that. You are human. Once in a while, you will do stuff like this.
Mhm.
And this is, people are like, well, what should I do? I was like, this is an opportunity. Remember that compassion we talk about? That forgiveness? Oh, yeah, yeah, but I can't believe I did it, man. This is really bad. I was like, no. You talk about being a good Christian and being forgiving of other people. Can you forgive yourself? But how can I slip and relapse and go back to this after 15 years? Doesn't matter. The question is, can you forgive yourself? Can you look at the data objectively? Can you accept that you are human? Not that you are weak, that you are human. There's nothing like weakness there. And be okay with that. And then move on without dwelling on it. Your ability to do that is what creates new neural connections within your brain. It is what gives you a new level of capacity as well. And this is how you grow as a human being.
The fact that they are feeling something from that means that their
Mm,
conscience is now allowing them to like before, when they were embarking on this, they didn't have a conscience, they didn't care, they
exactly.
just continued to embark on it. But now if it's bothering you, that's a great indicator that you're moving in the right direction.
No, thank you for that reminder. That is true. That's absolutely true. In the past, you would just sweep it under the rug naturally. You'd pretend it didn't happen. You'd have some cute saying as to, just to let it go. And then you would have to deal with the trauma later on, of course. And it
Mm-hmm.
only adds to your shame. It's never under the rug, it's really just into a container of more shame. But you're right. The fact that you're feeling it means that you're more aware. It's proof
Mm-hmm.
that you're human. It's proof that you're on the healing journey.
Yeah, and I think the bottom line is loving yourself and loving other people, realizing that, like you said, we're human and we're going to make mistakes sometimes, and that's okay. And I know one of the things for me, I had to realize that as I was coming out of that industry, I had to begin to realize that, I'm also not only praying for myself to overcome, the thoughts and the flashbacks and the things that I struggled with coming out of it, but I'm also praying for the girls that are still there, the girls that feel trapped. But then on the other side of that, you know what? I'm going to pray for the guys that come in and out of those doors. And when I first quit dancing and I got saved, I would go sit across the street and pray over the place, because I
Mm.
felt like it's really heartbreaking because I just seen the destruction on from every angle. But I feel like that has helped me a lot too. Just getting over the fact that, they have hurt too. The men are in there because they're dealing with something too. And it's just a big cesspool of people with problems that they don't want to face. They're trying to numb.
I think that's a wonderful way to heal, to come to terms with this, and to put yourself in a position to help others. I think for some it might be difficult to grasp the concept, maybe of because you're so in the moment when you are aroused or when you're triggered or when you say you're going to engage in that behavior that you're not able to be empathetic. You're not able to look at those people and go like, hey, that guy who looks like he's having a great time, he's there's a lot of pain there. And even with my clients, I work with men we have executive clients who come in. My oldest client was 95 years old. Like he was an active lecturer at a university, very brilliant mind. When he reached out for help, we have men in their 60s, their 50s. We have a lot of men who enjoyed this until they no longer could. I'm yet to meet a man, at least the clients who came in and they're just like, yeah, this is wonderful. So it's different for different people. There are some people in their early 20s, they wake up and they're like, I can't do this anymore. And the others who are in their 50s and 60s who come to realize, man, I am on my fourth divorce. I have stepped out in every single one of my relationships. And for the first time ever, the money, my net worth, the trips, the, the prescription medication, the escorts, nothing makes me feel better. Like I'm sitting here on a beach in my beautiful home in Fort Lauderdale with a yacht parked at the back, and I'm still not happy. And then they start thinking, maybe something's wrong, maybe something's wrong. So for those of you who see people engaged in this thinking like, oh man, it's fun and everyone's women are empowered and making money from their sexuality and men are enjoying it, and the women who go like, well, the men are paying for it and they're enjoying it and I feel like I'm some kind of therapist that's bringing blah 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 to his life. It's just a cesspool of pain for the most part.
So, like, tell me a little bit about that. It's a process. You see this on different levels with different men, how they process this and how they come out of it, and even
Yeah.
how they relapse from it. Um, do you see success where their lives have started to improve and they truly do get over it, or is it like an addiction? You hear about drug addictions where it's like you always kind of crave it, but you just get to the point where you don't do it anymore.
That's a great question. When first of all, I wouldn't do anything if there wasn't a definition of true success to it. If not, it would be pointless. I think that there's no true success to not being human. I think once you realize that you're human, if you can accept that part, you're good. The first thing I have all my clients do is define their reboots. Now we don't call it recovery. We actually call it porn reboots, and that's what the logo is, the P with the reset button in the middle. And that's because when I was seeking help, the concept of recovery was recovering that which you lost to your compulsive behavior. But when you think about it, if a man spent his entire early 20s or his 20s engaging in this behavior, what is he truly recovering? How can he remember what it's like to be a 25-year-old? He doesn't know what a healthy 25-year-old is. So all he has to lean on is what his pastor, his sponsor, his therapist, his counselor tells him is, hey, this is what recovery looks like. Recovery is all these things for you. Now perhaps for drug addiction or for alcohol addiction, substance abuse addictions, that's fine. But when it comes to sexual behavior is so complex. Like our arousal templates are so different. And I found it very unhealthy to be told that this is what sex is like. Imagine telling this to somebody who has watched thousands of hours of pornography and acted out in so many ways. To tell them this is what sex is like. It is you must be married. And then, in a lot of these conservative recovery circles, there was no definition. I was like, okay, so you're married now. So what happens with the sex? And then they can't talk about it anymore. They're like, no, you just be married and man and woman, and then and they don't talk about it anymore. So the truth was, a lot of people going in to get help for their sexually compulsive disorder were not getting help. They were actually ending up being in a 12-step group, getting married, and then putting the burden of that on their spouse who did not understand what was happening. And usually the relationship ended up breaking the partner ended up, the wife ended up with betrayal trauma, and it kept going on. And when I started seeking help, none of it made sense to me. So what I decided to do was, I realized that for a man seeking help for this, there was no recovery. You're not recovering anything. It's gone. The relationship is over. you, those years are gone. You've spent the money in the strip club with the escorts or whatever. It's done. But what is not done is now. In this very moment, you can hit the reset button and you can define who you want to be from this moment onwards. And that's why we call Porn Reboot. You can redefine your values as a man. You can define what integrity means like. You can define what a healthy sexual relationship is like. You can define all those things for yourself. And that is where true success begins. It's not what J.K. says is success for you. It's not what your pastor says. It's not what any man says. It is only between you, God, the universe, whatever it is you believe in. But it is a decision and a definition that you make on your own. Now, you can share it with your coach, with your pastor, with your sponsor, with your therapist, so they can give you guidelines. But when you define it, and I tell the man, define it. And I was like, are you comfortable with this? And he's like, I'm not sure. I was like, well, go through the program. And as you go through the program and you start to reconnect with your feelings, when you start understanding the things that were frozen in time that you use porn to get away from, and as you start recreating values based on that, it's like you keep going back to this document and you keep defining what it is. You're rebuilding yourself from the ground up as a man. And one day you will get to a point where you realize, you know what? I'm not engaging in this behavior, not because somebody said so or told me to show up to meetings or because I'm using willpower, but because it just doesn't feel right. Like we don't care in our program whether you slip or relapse. Somebody's just like, oh, I slipped, I relapsed. We're like, okay, fine. Why? Was it a boundary you crossed? Was it self-care? If you can't tell me the data, I don't want to hear your emotions. Like I don't want to. We'll talk about that. We will acknowledge the emotions. But after acknowledging it, give me the data. I know you feel frustrated. I know you feel shameful. All right, let's talk about that. Okay, feel this way. Now, what's the data? Why did it happen? When you start identifying that, then you're able to define it better. Then men get to a point where they're just like, you know what? That just didn't feel good. I was like, well, did you orgasm? They're like, yeah, orgasm. But dude, during the process, I was aware. Like, if they acted out, they were like, I felt myself driving to the strip club. Like there was a conversation in my head. I knew what I was doing. And in the past, I could just shut that door. I could go from married guy, uh, manager of whatever, to this other person, just like this. I could become that guy and I could switch right when I was done. They're like, now I'm struggling with the switching. It's like, you're struggling with the switching because that part of you, the inner child, the subpersonality, whatever it is, you have started bringing it into the light. You have started acknowledging it. And now, because you are bringing it out, you see it for what it is. It is not your enemy. It was only there to protect you. And now that you are aware, you cannot be in congruence with this behavior anymore. That is how ending an out of control compulsive behavior happens, not by sitting in a 12-step group and talking with people all day long, by somebody yelling at you that you relapse, you shouldn't have done that. Why'd you go to the strip club? It is through compassion. It is through understanding. It's through patience. It's through love. It is through realizing that you are not a bad person, and stop listening to the lie that you are not worthy of love. Stop listening to the lie that you are unlovable. You are, just because you exist. But you must come to that realization on your own. And you will. You are the expert at yourself. That's why we do what we do. We're a little bit different from others. But in 11 years, speaking about the success, we just spoke about this at a meeting. We're the only company that helps men with their sexually compulsive behaviors, where almost every single one of the men will put out a video testimonial for us publicly when they are done, without prompting. If a man can go from, I don't want to share my real name, I'm worried about how this is going to show up on my credit card statements, to, I would like to share my story. I would like to share my testimony with others. Yes, I want to be on your podcast, JK. I want to put out a video, and we don't even prompt you. You just got to that point, then true transformation has happened.
Yes, that's awesome. That's so awesome. And I hear in just the way that you're speaking and the different techniques that you use in your coaching, like that is different. And I'm sitting here listening to you, and I don't struggle with porn. I don't watch porn at all, but I'm sad I don't agree with it at all. But there's so many that's so applicable to so many areas of life too. It's like asking yourself why the data, figuring out the data, why your behavior is doing a certain thing. That's powerful. So I mean, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this a few times to probably wrap my mind fully around what you just said. But I do want to touch on this just for a moment, because I feel like the thing with Pornhub, and I don't know that, 20 years ago, if Pornhub was, I don't know if it was a thing then. I know watching porn was a thing, but I've heard such bad things about Pornhub. And I just read something the other day about there was this boy who I guess is a man now, and he had gotten raped, and they had posted this on Pornhub and was selling it. And so he was suing Pornhub, and the man who raped him was in jail,
Mhm.
but he's suing Pornhub because the videos are still there. And the owner of Pornhub is like, this, this is ridiculous. Like, that's one story I've heard, but I've heard other stories because I do kind of still follow, this
Mhm.
industry because I like to know what's going
Yeah.
on. And, of girls who will sign up to do one particular thing, and then they end up getting forced into doing a whole lot more than what was agreed upon.
Mhm.
And there's like blackmail of like, you're going to do this, or we're going to send these videos to your parents. It's just so gut wrenching to me to think that kids are getting taken advantage of, women too. But I mean, women, it's horrible either way. But I feel like there does need to be an awareness brought to this, because this goes back to that harmless entertainment that we talk about. Like, it's not harmless entertainment when people are getting raped and stripped of their self-worth, even if they've agreed upon one level, but then they're getting pushed to another level. It's just such a bad organization. It's a bad trail to go down, on
Mhm.
every angle. And I just feel like there needs to be more awareness brought to that.
I think there are a lot of good organizations that are raising awareness around this. I think that the issue with some of the organizations that I'll talk about this, about why I don't think they are as effective as they could be. And I think that is because they embody too much of the good. When I say too much of the good is if someone comes out as a Christian organization or a faith-based organization, immediately they're going to alienate a lot of people who could be very instrumental and persuasive when it comes to changing things. But that's because people see it as a good industry. I've had people ask, like, JK, how do you, we have hundreds of clients currently enrolled. This is not a course, these are actual clients, and we are online. And I truly believe that one of the things that has contributed to our success is everybody in our organization is uncompromising about embracing both parts of it. So I don't hold anything back. I talk about it. I'm aggressive about it. I'm open about my behavior. The energy I give off is both. I'm willing to be absolutely compassionate about it, but I'm also willing to be very, very direct and even verbally violent if necessary in order to get the good across. I think a lot of organizations shy away from that and they want to be seen as a good organization. Our organization doesn't care about being seen as good because human beings are not like, we're good internally, but we have a capacity for this. And if you're going up against an organization like that doesn't have any sort of morals, not only does it not have morals, it is dictating human behavior. They have algorithms that already know where you're going. They know what you're going to watch next. They know where you're headed. They allow videos that have hypnosis in them to slowly take you from genre to genre. Everything they do is optimized to keep an individual on the site for as long as possible. So if you're going to go up against an industry like this, and you're only going to be a goody two shoes, you're like, we're going to take the fight to this, and we're going to protest. And it's, I'm not saying this is not effective. I think it's very effective. I think social media has raised a lot of awareness. I think we've seen a lot of ex-sex workers and performers who've been abused thanks to TikTok and Instagram. I think even right now as we speak, there's like a trend of women who've been in pornography like trending on Instagram. Or maybe it's just our algorithm because we're like a little bit in the industry. So we just see, just, oh my God, what is this? Oh my God, this girl is crying. What's happening? And you're just like, oh, that's horrible. I didn't know. So I think we're on the same we're seeing the same things. But at the same time, um, the thing with sites like Pornhub and MindGeek owns almost everything is that they understand that pornography fuses the parts of the human brain that process violence and sex. That's the reason why there is nothing like vanilla sex anymore. People don't even realize that all of it is rough and violent. All of it. In the early days, there used to be stuff that was more like with music and it was gentle love making. Now, all of it is just like, you're just like, why is everything so violent? And when you think about it, when there is something out there, Amber, that somebody who is uneducated, somebody who is not fully mentally developed, even though physically they may be an adult, somebody who speaks a different language, it doesn't matter this person's mental state. If they're able to watch this and decipher it, they're like, they know what it is despite their mental state, and they can act on it despite their mental state. Is that consensual? If anybody can just click on it and find it. The problem is the porn industry understands this. And so it has conditioned people to bring out that part of them. All one needs to do is go through the comment section of any sort of pornography. And it is the place where normal, decent people, people's fathers, grandfathers, the people that are entrusted to protect them and provide for them, this is the place, the environment where they get to be their violent self. This is the place where civilized men get to live out their rape fantasies, their fantasies of abuse, their fantasies of being with stepdaughters or whatever you want to say. I don't want to trigger anybody on the podcast, but this is their world and they live in it. But they don't understand that when they step into this world, much like stepping into a bar, a lot of men don't know that the bar at night is designed to make you drink more and make you feel anxiety and all these things. They don't understand that. The porn site is designed to make you be more violent, to crave more of that, to be more disconnected. And that continues. So when we view pornography, those who do it, they are fueling the demand for this because now the pornographers have to find more women and they understand this. They're like, people have become so sophisticated. Men don't want to watch stuff that looks overly edited. They want it to be more real. And most of the girls that supply is not experienced actresses. So they need to get more women who are amateur. And the men need to see like, oh, she obviously was an audition. She didn't know what she was getting into. We knew about the fake auditions that were acting. Now these are real auditions. I can tell she didn't expect that. She didn't expect that. I can tell it. I can see it on her face. But that is what excites me. That is my fantasy. And they totally forget that this is a human being. That is somebody's child. But all you see is the physical part of them. You don't realize they have feelings. You know, the crazy thing is a lot of these men, they break down later on when I'm working with them because when you start feeling your pain and your trauma, and then you go like, oh my God, like somebody else feeling this, like that deep shame to imagine a person, even if of the opposite sex. A lot of times we say, oh, I don't know what a man is feeling. I don't know what a woman is feeling. But when a woman starts going like, man, that guy must be in so much pain. And when you realize the amount of work that's done year after year of endless work to overcome your trauma, and then you begin to see like what it takes, just how simple it is to inflict it on someone. And you're watching it, you're entertaining yourself to someone's real trauma. Then of course we have the suicide rates, we have the drug abuse, we have all the things that happens to these people. And of course we have a lot of women right now who, um how would I put it, they don't trust themselves anymore. They can't be in a normal relationship anymore because they're traumatized. They're always looking like this person is going to hurt me, this person is going to use me, or they're still hurting. They're like, why isn't this person using me? Why isn't he hurting me? He must not love me because of that, because he's not doing that to me. And for them, that's normal. The number of men I have right now, we have a dating program, Amber, and a lot of men come to me and they're like, I'm dating and I'm doing it the way you teach, JK, which is to always seek intimacy first before anything. Just if there's no intimacy, no connection, I don't move any further. And I'm confused because there are women telling me that this is their first experience of a real man. They're like, I hear about this stuff. Like I hear women in podcasts talking about what a real man is. And I just didn't think it's real. Like I didn't think you were real. I thought that this is some kind of game you're running on me to get something. And they just don't understand. They don't understand when a guy is just like, hey, it was really, when the guy is like, hey, it was really nice meeting you, but I just don't think this is going to work out. They're like, what the heck? Men don't do that. Well, my guys do that to women. I'm just like, if you don't feel connected, I'm just like, check yourself. And they'll stay accountable. And they're like, dude, she was like really attractive. She was really this. I was like, and I did what you said and I checked. And really, she was just pretty. I mean, I'm sure she's a wonderful person. She had some good stories, but I did not connect with her. Like when I
Mm.
took the body and the looks and everything out of the way, I actually just wanted to have sex with her. And I knew deep down I would not want to see her again. And I knew I was about to start lying and telling her, like, yeah, I'm looking for a relationship. But I was just honest and I told her, I'm not, I'll be honest with you, I'm just kind of dating right now and I'm healing. I'm going through this process. And I don't think we're looking for the same thing, right? And I think that's the kind of grassroots work that needs to be done because the damage is already out there. I think we do need to raise awareness, but we also need to raise awareness of a whole group of people who are struggling with mental health issues as a result of the exposure to pornography, being in the industry, OnlyFans, sexualizing themselves on Instagram, and so on.
I do truly agree with you on the sense of like, especially when you're looking for another relationship, you have to connect. That's vital. There's true power behind being able to sit down with someone and just say, you know what, I like you a lot as a person. We could be friends, but we do not connect on that level. And I tell you something vital. I did this activity where when I first heard of this about kind of putting down the things that you want in a mate,
Mm.
and this is going off tangent just slightly, but it's important, I feel like. So this thing of putting down all these different character traits that you're looking for in a mate, you have to counter that with, okay, now what kind of person do I need to be able to have a person that is these things? And when you start doing that, you look into the window of like, it's like putting a mirror in front of your face and saying, these are the areas that I need to change. I can't support a person that has these criteria if I don't become this. And going back to you and your work, it's like, this is what you're doing. You're teaching men to look for these specific things of connection, different areas of connection, but also you're teaching them how to be the person for that. You're teaching people how to have these healthy relationships. And I think it's really powerful because I think people probably truly heal working with you.
Oh, I know they heal. I'll say that for sure.
Well, in
Anybody listening?
all areas, not
Yeah,
just
yeah,
in pornography, but I'm saying truly healing and growing as a person.
yeah. Well, the problem with pornography is as you've probably found out in your life with things that you've had to overcome, is that it's never about the thing. It's never about the substance. It's never about the behavior. It's always about something deeper in the life that's I don't really like to use the word broken all the time, but it's always about something else. And when a client comes in, um, our role is just to show them that is what we do is really we raise an individual's awareness to go from being focused on external things to stop being scared of everything that's inside you. I know it sounds chaotic inside. It feels chaotic. I know you second guess yourself. I know you don't think you're worthy of this. I know you think something is wrong with you and you're not able to overcome it, or you have a high sex drive, or you like this too much. And we don't force anybody. We don't teach them otherwise. All we do is we teach people how to become more and more self aware. And as they become more and more self aware, they start connecting with themselves a little bit more. And once you do that, and you have people to, of course, keep you accountable and guide you through it, you heal yourself always, right? But you got to do it with other people, because on your own, you're going to run away from yourself. You're going to mix with the wrong people. You're going to cope with the wrong things. So, as long as you have the right group around you, they have the right intentions, and everyone is raising their awareness together, that's where healing is found.
It's beautiful. Do you work with women too, or just men?
I learned early on. I first started working with women to stay in my lane. Women are women are a lot more complex when it comes to sexually compulsive behaviors. Typically, women have other co-occurring disorders, not substance related. Sometimes it has to do with relationships, some deeper issues. Women are welcome to reach out, and we have a great set of resources that we refer them out to. But in the next year or so, we're going to bring in some amazing therapists. It takes us about 3 years to hire one therapist. I'm really, really picky because they have to unlearn everything they learned all the way up to their doctorate in order to work and actually serve my clients the right way. We're looking to bring in some amazing women that are in the interview process to start supporting women struggling with this.
Mhm. That's awesome. I was on a site recently and
Mm,
had commented, and someone commented under there, and it was a lady, and she said that she was addicted to
mm.
porn. And uh, I was like, I don't have the resources right now. I really don't know where to send you to. I can, and we chatted for a little while, me and her, but it makes me happy to know that you're growing into this because and finding the right therapist for this, because it's not just a problem for men. There are some women that do struggle with it, and I think
Yeah,
that
I wouldn't say there's some women. The truth is, there are a lot of women who struggle with
mm,
this. I have a lot of respect for women who share it, and the way they typically share it is the same way you said it. Like, they'll show up in a comment or an email. They'll be like, "Oh, I've been on your list and following you," and they'll all say the same thing. It's not just men who deal with this; it's women too. And I feel bad because I feel like there is a lot of material out there for men, but there's not enough stuff that actually addresses the unique ways that a woman deals with it. The way straight men view pornography, the way gay men view pornography, the way women view pornography is very different. The way women relate to each other and the way that they connect emotionally, their range of viewing pornography is a lot more complex than a guy's. A guy's can be quite logical. A woman's can vary from literally the time of the year to what she's interested in at one point. It is so complex. So the systems for working with a woman are slightly different for that of men. But we're always happy to give referrals to some therapists that we know that work with women.
so I will put we'll put all your information in the show notes for sure. But
Yeah.
if you had to tell my listeners or anyone who listens to this where they could find you, find more information about you, what platforms you're most active on, where would that be?
Well, first would be YouTube. Just search for my name, J.K. Last name is Emezi. I would say Instagram but we just keep getting banned by Instagram all the time, which is fine because we keep popping up. We don't care. They think we're porn. We're the opposite, which is so interesting with these. We didn't talk about the social media platforms that promote this as well. You can also find us on Facebook as Elevated Recovery or Porn Reboot. We have a podcast, the Porn Reboot Podcast as well, with 500 episodes. It's a great place to just learn about us for free. And what I want to tell everybody is our main focus is putting information out there that works. So I actually can't pitch anything because we have a wait list right now. So what we tell people is actually check out our YouTube, check out the podcast, check out the blog on the website, elevatedrecovery.org, and then learn and educate yourself as much as you can. And then if you ever need a referral, a resource to be pointed in the right direction, just shoot us an email, put in an application, and we'll point you in the right direction.
That's awesome. You are doing such amazing work. And I know we've went way over our time today, but I can't tell you how much I can't tell you how much I appreciate your insight, your wisdom on this topic is immense. So I can't tell you how much I really appreciate it and have enjoyed our conversation, and just hope that it touches people in the right way and at the right time when they need to hear it.
Absolutely. And Amber, I also want to tell you that what you're doing is amazing, and I hope you know that. It's not easy to come out and speak about this. It's not easy to put yourself out there and just throw your message into the world. And I think you're doing an amazing job. I think your heart is in the right place. And I really wish you all the success in the world. I want to see you on stage. I want to see you somewhere spreading this message soon in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. It has been one of those things that you struggle, you wrestle around, like, how do I actually share this? And, you know, in a way that's not, I feel like sometimes you're in between a little, like a rock and a hard place, or like a wall where you're like, you don't want to trigger people, but you don't want to like, and then you're dealing with your own shame and you're like, yeah, I gotta, but one day at a time, and hopefully we can spread the message more. And it takes minds like, you know, connecting with people that are aligned to really bring these messages out to the public. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Through the Trauma Podcast. If you have found value in this episode or believe in the mission behind what we are doing, please subscribe so that you never miss any future episodes. Also, be sure to check out our transformation project at transformationthroughtraumaproject.com, where we help inspirational stories get heard on a larger scale through multiple platforms. If you know someone who can benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Until next time.